Napoli versus Juventus. Vesuvio lavali col fuoco. Vesuvius washed them with fire. That's what Juventus fans chant at Napoli supporters. They're telling an entire city they deserve to be buried in lava. And they mean it. This rivalry isn't about football, it's about Italy itself. The North versus the South. Turin's Fiat factories against Naples' chaotic streets. The wealthy industrial elite against the Mediterranean working class. When these two clubs meet, they're playing out tensions that date back to Italian unification in 1861. For decades, northern clubs controlled everything. Juventus, Milan, Inter, they passed the Scudetto between themselves like a family heirloom. No southern club had ever won the league. Then, in 1984, a short Argentine with a cocaine problem and a left foot touched by God arrived in Naples. A newspaper captured the mood perfectly. The city lacked a mayor, houses, schools, buses, employment, and sanitation. But none of that mattered, because now they had Maradona. In 1987, Napoli won their first ever title, 9 points ahead of Juventus, the first southern club to win Serie A. In Turin, Juventus fans held mock funerals. In Naples, the celebrations went on for days. Maradona wasn't just a player anymore. He became the symbol of revenge for a century of condescension. The hostility never faded. At Juventus home games, the chants turned vicious. Wash them with fire, telling Neapolitans they deserve to be buried in lava. Juventus have been fined repeatedly. Partial stadium bans. None of it helped. In 2016, Gonzalo Higuain broke the Serie A goal-scoring record while playing for Napoli. That summer, he signed for Juventus for €90 million. Shirts were burned in the streets of Naples. His image was hung in effigy. Since then, away fans have sometimes been banned from traveling in both directions. When Napoli finally won another title in 2023, after 33 years of waiting, their stadium already bore Maradona's name. He died in 2020 and never got to see it happen. But everywhere in Naples, you could see his face on murals, on flags, on the tears of people who remembered what he meant. To the north, he was a drug addict who cheated with his hand. To the south, he was a god who chose their side. That's the thing about this rivalry. It was never really about football. It's about whether Italy is one country or two, whether the South will ever be treated as equal, whether the factory owners and the fishermen can ever see each other as compatriots. Football doesn't have the answer, but twice a year it asks the question. Red Star Belgrade versus Dinamo Zagreb. May 13, 1990. Maksimir Stadium, Zagreb. 20,000 people came to watch football. What they witnessed would be discussed by historians for decades. Croatia had just held its first free elections in 50 years. The independence movement was gaining momentum. Serbia wanted Yugoslavia to remain whole, two nations pulling in opposite directions, and somehow all that tension ended up on a football pitch. The visiting Red Star fans, the Delije, were led by Željko Ražnatović. You might know him as Arkan. Within a year, he'd be commanding paramilitary units accused of war crimes. Before kickoff, Red Star supporters started chanting, "Zagreb is Serbian." Then they began ripping out seats and throwing them at Dinamo fans. The police moved in, but witnesses say they only targeted the home supporters. The Croatians watching felt something click into place. The state wasn't protecting them. The state was the enemy. And then came the moment everyone remembers. Zvonimir Boban, Dinamo's 21-year-old captain, saw a policeman beating a fan lying on the pitch. He sprinted across the grass and launched a flying kick that knocked the officer to the ground. The whole thing was broadcast on live television. Boban was banned for 6 months. He missed the World Cup. Criminal charges were filed. But in Croatia, he became a national hero overnight. Years later, he'd say, "Here I was, a public figure prepared to risk his life, career, and everything that fame could have brought for one ideal, the Croatian cause." The match never actually started. Over 100 people were injured, beaten, stabbed, tear-gassed. Historians don't claim a football riot caused the Yugoslav wars. The tensions had been building for decades, but that afternoon revealed how close everything already was to breaking. The policeman Boban kicked? He was a Bosnian named Refik Ahmetovic. Years later, he publicly forgave Boban. By then, over 130,000 people had died in the wars that followed. There's a monument outside Maksimir Stadium now. It reads, "To all the Dinamo fans for whom the war started on May 13, 1990, and ended with them laying down their lives on the altar of the Croatian homeland." Many of those fans joined the same paramilitary units that would fight the Delige. The boys who threw seats at each other ended up shooting at each other in the hills. Today, the fixture barely exists. Since Croatian independence, Red Star and Dinamo have only met in European competition. And even then, the matches require military-level security. The hatred never left. The opportunity to feel it twice a season vanished. PSG vs Olympique Marseille, February 2010, Parc des Princes, Paris. A match against Marseille is about to start, but outside the stadium, two PSG supporter groups, the Boulogne Boys and Supra Auteuil, turn on each other. A fan named Yann Laurence is beaten unconscious. He never wakes up. He dies from his injuries weeks later. And here's the dark part. He wasn't killed by a Marseille supporter. He was killed by fellow PSG fans in a turf war over who controlled the stands. After that night, both ultra groups were banned from Parc des Princes. The stadium that once shook with raw noise became a hospitality venue where celebrities sit in VIP seats. PSG and Marseille's hatred runs deeper than any internal feud. The rivalry started properly in 1986, when Bernard Tapie bought Marseille and PSG won their first title. In 1991, Canal+, the French TV giant, bought PSG. Then came an unspoken understanding. Both sides would publicly fuel the animosity. The hotter the rivalry, the higher the ratings. Controversy sells advertising. They got more than they bargained for. The 1993 Champions League final should have been Marseille's crowning moment. They became the first and only French club to win Europe's biggest trophy. But weeks before that final, Tapie had bribed players from Valenciennes to take it easy in a league match, so his squad could rest for Munich. When it came out, Marseille were stripped of their league title, relegated to the second division, and Tapie went to prison. They kept the Champions League trophy, but the dynasty was over, and their fans still believe Paris made sure the punishment was as brutal as possible. The cultural divide is about more than football. Paris represents power, wealth, the establishment. Marseille represents the Mediterranean working class, the people who never trusted the capital anyway. One city has the politicians, the other has the port workers. When PSG's Qatari owners arrived in 2011 with unlimited money, they bought the establishment team in a country where hating the establishment is a national sport. In 2025, PSG finally won the Champions League, becoming only the second French club to lift the trophy after Marseille. Riots broke out across Paris. 2 people died. The celebrations turned violent in a way that felt almost inevitable. Le Classique keeps finding new ways to burn. In March 2025, PSG beat Marseille 3-1, but the scoreline was a footnote. Adrien Rabiot, who came through PSG's academy and made over 200 appearances for the club, was now wearing Marseille blue. The home fans never forgave him. Discriminatory chants rained down all match. Banners targeted his family. His mother, also his agent, lodged a police complaint. The referee never stopped the game. Afterwards, Rabiot posted a message aimed at PSG's president. "You can have all the money in the world, you can't buy class." Canal+ wanted a rivalry they could sell. They got one they couldn't control. Joey Barton versus everyone. Rivalries need 2 sides. Joey Barton managed to create one side entirely on his own. The talent was real. England caps, Premier League starts, a midfielder who could control a game. But something kept getting in the way. December 2004, Manchester City's Christmas party. Barton stubbed out a lit cigar in a young teammate's eye. Jamie Tandy, a youth player, needed medical treatment. He later sued and won £65,000 in damages. May 2007. Training ground at City. Barton attacked teammate Ousmane Darboe from behind and kept hitting him until Darboe was unconscious on the grass. A suspected detached retina. Cuts and bruises photographed for the papers. Barton's explanation, given years later: "He wasn't a natural fighter. I'm from the streets. There's your difference." He received a 4-month suspended sentence, but that wasn't his only criminal conviction that year. 6 months later, Barton was jailed after CCTV captured him punching a man repeatedly outside a McDonald's in Liverpool, then attacking a 15-year-old boy who was with him. The judge called it a violent and cowardly act. Barton served 74 days. His playing career continued somehow. 9 red cards across his time in England. The final day meltdown at QPR, where, after being sent off, he elbowed Carlos Tevez, kicked Sergio Aguero, and attempted to headbutt Vincent Kompany before being dragged away. 12-match ban. At Rangers in Scotland, he was banished from the training ground after an alleged fight with teammate Andy Halliday. His time there lasted 8 games. Even in management, the pattern followed. After a match at Barnsley, police investigated an alleged tunnel incident. And in March 2025, he was convicted of assaulting his wife in an incident from 2021. The court heard she sustained visible injuries. He received a suspended sentence and announced his intention to appeal. He read philosophy books in prison. He quotes Nietzsche in interviews. He reinvented himself as a thinker, a podcast host, a man who'd learned from his mistakes. None of it stopped the pattern. Some enemies can't be outrun. AC Milan versus Inter Milan. Picture this. March 9th, 1908. Midnight in Milan. A group of 44 men walk out of the l'Orologio restaurant, furious. They've just split from AC Milan over a fundamental question. Should the club remain exclusively Italian or embrace players and members from anywhere in the world? That night, painter Giorgio Muggiani designed a new crest, black and blue against a golden sky, and Internazionale was born. The name itself was a statement. Here's what makes this different from every other rivalry. Milan and Inter weren't founded as separate clubs. They were the same family, torn apart by ideology. The founders of Inter believed football should belong to everyone. Milan disagreed and spent 44 years paying for it. When they finally won another title in 1951, it was 3 Swedish strikers who delivered it. The argument settled itself. Both clubs ended up sharing the San Siro. Same stadium, same city, different ends. Inter's ultras occupy the north curve. Milan's take the south. 80,000 people, separated by 100 meters and over a century of accumulated resentment. And yet, players keep crossing the divide. Inter let a young Andrea Pirlo leave in 2001. He went to Milan and became one of the greatest midfielders of his generation. 2 Champions League titles, a World Cup. Inter's decision haunts them to this day. Clarence Seedorf won nothing at Inter. He moved across the city in 2002 and lifted 2 European Cups with Milan. Ronaldo Nazario was an icon in blue and black stripes, but injuries broke him. When he resurfaced at Milan years later, he was a shadow, and Inter fans still claim him as theirs. Then there's Zlatan. When he moved to Milan in 2010, he scored in derby after derby and never let his former club forget it. When he returned to Milan a decade later, aged 38, he did it again. 4 Scudetti across both sides. No loyalty to either, just dominance. But no one stirred the pot quite like Hakan Çalhanoğlu. In 2021, he left Milan for Inter on a free transfer. The first derby back, he stepped up to take a penalty, scored, then cupped his ears in front of the Curva Sud. Milan ultras hung a banner across a city bridge the next morning. The hatred was personal now. The fascinating part? Unlike other derbies built on religion or politics, this one started with something almost philosophical, a disagreement about who gets to belong. Milan eventually opened their doors. Inter never closed theirs. Today, both clubs field players from every corner of the world. The original argument is long forgotten, but the rivalry it created, that's forever. Benfica versus Porto. In 2004, Portuguese police launched an operation called Apito Dourado, Golden Whistle. What they found would make international headlines. Wiretapped phone calls captured conversations about working referees before matches, payments, gifts. According to court testimony, escort services were offered to officials before key games. One call, later uploaded to YouTube, allegedly discussed ensuring a referee would favour Nacional against Benfica. Nacional won 3-2. 16 people were arrested, including the president of the Portuguese Football League and FC Porto's chairman Pinto da Costa, nicknamed O Papa, the Pope, for his power over Portuguese football. A former Porto girlfriend published a book with even more allegations. A referee went public, describing the system from the inside. The investigation sprawled across years. And then, Porto received a 6-point deduction. Pinto da Costa's criminal charges were dismissed on a technicality. He was banned for 2 years by the league, then successfully appealed. But the story doesn't end there. Years later, a young hacker named Rui Pinto leaked thousands of internal documents through football leaks. What he allegedly uncovered suggested Benfica had been playing the same game Porto was accused of years earlier. Internal emails, discussions about referees, notes on cultivating relationships with judges and journalists. When Pinto went to trial, journalists discovered something remarkable. One judge involved in related proceedings had been a Benfica member for 50 years. He'd received a Golden Eagle pin, honoring his loyalty to the club. He asked to be removed from the case. His request was denied. A supervising judge ruled that his passion for Benfica could not possibly affect his impartiality. In most countries, football is a sport. In Portugal, it's closer to infrastructure. Too embedded to fail, too connected to question. Porto and Benfica don't just compete for titles, they compete for influence. And influence, unlike trophies, doesn't come with a final whistle. West Ham versus Millwall. Both clubs started in the same East End docklands. Both drew supporters from rival shipyards competing for the same contracts. Your employer determined your team. Your team determined your enemies. West Ham's intercity firm became one of the most organised hooligan groups in British history. They took their name from the trains they used to travel to away matches. And they had a signature move, leaving calling cards on beaten opponents. Congratulations! You have just met the ICF. Millwall's bushwhackers were considered so dangerous that the improvised weapons their fans created earned a name. Newspapers folded tight and compressed until they were hard enough to cause serious damage, became known across England as Millwall bricks. In 1976, a Millwall supporter named Ian Pratt fell under a train at New Cross Station during a confrontation with West Ham fans. He was 18 years old. West Ham supporters made a chant about it. You can probably guess what it said. 2 years later, before another fixture, leaflets appeared across South London. A West Ham fan must die to avenge him. Police treated it as a credible threat. They've had to take every meeting between these clubs seriously ever since. August 2009, League Cup second round. The clubs hadn't played each other in 4 years. West Ham fans invaded the pitch 3 separate times. Outside the ground, organised groups fought running battles through the streets of East London. A Millwall supporter was stabbed. More than 20 people were injured. The government's sports minister called it a disgrace to football and warned against returning to the dark days of the 80s. What makes this rivalry significant beyond the violence is how it helped shape the protocols English football uses today. The banning orders, the stadium segregation, the intelligence-led policing, developed in part because authorities had to find a way to let these two clubs exist in the same city. Harry Redknapp, who managed West Ham, had simple advice after 2009. Never let these two clubs play each other in a cup competition again. They haven't met since 2012. The football gods listened. The fans are still waiting. Football isn't just a sport. It's a container for everything we can't say anywhere else. Class, religion, war, self-destruction. The question of who belongs and who doesn't. Put 80,000 people in a stadium, give them colors to wear and songs to sing, and watch what comes out. Sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it's terrifying. Usually, it's both. Subscribe now, because the beautiful game has an ugly side, and we're not afraid to show it.